We've learned a lot at this conference about how professionals can build relationships, avoid risks, and maximize opportunities in social media. In this closing keynote address, we'd examine how to synthesize these lessons into a cohesive written strategy that keeps your business on the right track. Please welcome our closing keynote speaker, Brian Wasson.
Well, thank you. Just before the speech, one of the T&B folks told me that I was like the big firework at the end of a 4th of July display. So either that means that I'm the bomb, or this is really going to blow. One of the two. But my name is Brian Wasson. I'm a commercial litigator. I'm here from Detroit, Michigan. So pardon me if I lag a little bit where I'm at. I'm getting ready for bed right now. But it is a real honor to be here, have been invited to come speak at this event. I've found, I kind of suspected this would be the case, and I have found just with interacting with everybody here today that Hawaii is a community that really gets social media. We all know that social media is about relationship and community, and this is a place that gets community, right? You have each other here in the middle of the ocean, and you already know the value of relationship and community. So this is a place that really understands, I think, the power and potential and the real purpose of social media. So I hope that you've gotten quality. I hope that you've gotten content out of this seminar that will help you carry forward what you're doing in your various applications. I know that I have. I've found things that are interesting and things that I'm going to remember to share with clients when I counsel them on social media related issues. So I'd like to suggest we give a hand to the organizers here for putting on a great performance. Now I was in Monty Constable, my new friend. I was in his session today on storytelling, and one of the things he said is that you really need to give an engaging story because old tricks like getting a bunch of people to follow you and then offering a prize don't work. Well, I liked a lot of what he said, but I'm gonna bank on that one still working because I'm gonna offer you one. I have my materials available in Prezi format if you're familiar with that software, and I will make a link available to those presentation materials for anybody who wants to follow me on Twitter today. That way I'll know that you came from this conference. I don't like to publish them broadly for a variety of reasons, but I'll share them here with anybody at this conference. So if you want to follow me at BD Wasson on Twitter, I'll be happy to send you a link to those materials shortly. So what I want to bring together here is I can't possibly summarize and synthesize the heart of every breakout group that you've had today. But what I do want to do is give you some tools to take those inspirations, those lessons that you've learned today, bring them back to your respective organizations, and help create a framework in which you can implement them. Now, you may have, I'm not going to tell you precisely what to do on your individual application. That's up to you. That, in large part, you probably already have a handle on. But especially if you're from a larger organization, even smaller ones, but especially the larger your organization is, how many know that it's hard to get everybody on the same page, right? Especially when it comes to implementing a social media strategy. So what I want to do is help you keep everyone on the same page and help you avoid a few of the more potential legal exposure issues that I mentioned in my own presentation earlier this morning. So I wanted to give you ideas for 3 separate policies that you can implement in your organization that will help keep everybody on the same page. These 3 different policies are targeted towards 3 different audiences. The first is keeping your team in sync. Okay, this policy is a set of principles, a set of instructions to your employees at large. Everybody in the organization, whether you're on the team of people that implements your social media strategy or not, this is what you would consider in the corporate context your standard social media policy. This is what any employee of any organization needs to understand about social media in general. And the first thing to understand is that this policy exists in a universe of other policies. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. Any organization that adopts a social media policy, this is in addition to all the other policies that you've already got in place, and sometimes you think, well, do we really need another one? There are creative ways to structure them, blend them into the ones you already have, but it's important to understand that you don't just adopt these principles in a vacuum. Different factors that may or may not apply to you that will influence the content that you put into your social media policy. Well, the first one is if you happen to be a unionized workplace and you've got a collective bargaining agreement in place, that's going to trump anything that you put in your social media policy as an employer. So you need to make sure that anything you adopt is consistent with that. Even if you're not a union workplace, chances are you already have a raft of other policies in place, from anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, all these examples here. Again, policies that you need to make sure are at least consistent with what you're adopting in the social media platform. And then, again, these principles only apply to United States companies, United States operations. Anything outside that jurisdiction, you're going to need to consult someone who knows something about those laws, which isn't me. But in the main, these are our 12 principles that I've broken down. And I've actually taken these principles from model social media policies that I and others at my firm use when crafting individual policies for our own clients. So we can think of this as kind of syncing our watches together. When you sync your watch, you all look at your watch and hit click at the same time. These are 12 policies that you kind of sync everybody else's watch together. The first here is take social media seriously. Now, if you were in my breakout session this morning, you heard a series of examples about what happens when you don't do this. Okay, social media, we all understand that it's a powerful platform. It gives us the power to do great things, but the wisdom of Spider-Man tells us that with great power comes great responsibility. Okay, the magnitude of the good things that we can do is at least matched, if not outweighed, by the magnitude of the bad things that can happen if we misuse social media. There are a number of examples. I won't repeat them all from this morning, but every one of you is sitting in this room here can think of a headline that you've read probably within the last month of somebody that did something really stupid on social media just because they weren't thinking. Right? The medium is so informal that they got themselves caught up in the moment. They let something go that shouldn't have been in the public eye, and now it's out there for the entire world to see. So this is something you tell your employees. Take this seriously. Recognize. Give them some examples. What I do in my policies that I write, I give them concrete examples. Look, these are the types of things that can happen if you're not careful. Second, be mindful of your reputation. And here it's helpful to remind your employees, look, it doesn't matter what hat you think you're wearing. If you're posting in the moment as just me, the person, if you're posting as an employee, you think you're wearing your marketing director hat versus your person out clubbing at night hat, and that people should understand that you're wearing that hat when you post. They don't. Okay, nobody knows what box you think you've compartmentalized yourself in when you're posting to social media. They will take everything that they learned from you and put that together, blend that together into one cohesive reputation that you now have to live with. And one lesson that we talked about this morning was the age-old wisdom, going back really to the beginning of human civilization, that it takes a lifetime to build up a good reputation and only a moment to destroy it. And that's what social media does to your reputation. That's what your employees should be reminded of. It's helpful to get them on the same page with that. Third, in the employment context, tell your employees to think of themselves as brand ambassadors. Not because, like a marriage, once you've associated yourself with this employee, your organization, and this employee, and now you're linked in the public mind, you're linked for better or for worse. And if that employee does things to tarnish their own reputation, that's necessarily going to reflect, to some degree or another, on the organization that they work for. But it goes both ways too. Things that they can do to enhance their own reputation, enhance their reputation as a professional, necessarily enhances the reputation of your company. And they can also be your eyes and ears out in the social media space. And those of you who manage brands know how hard it is to have your eyes and ears out in every little corner of every social media site. You can't do it. But if you've got 100 employees who think of themselves as the brand ambassadors, they're going to tell you, hey, this person's saying this about this brand, or this information is circulating that isn't true, maybe we ought to do something about that. You work as a team that way. Fourth, be respectful. This is actually, believe it or not, this is actually the most legally dangerous of the provisions that I'm talking about in terms of a social media policy. And that's because the National Labor Relations Board has taken a very aggressive stance on enforcing what's called Section 7 of the National Labor Relations Act, which protects protected concerted activity. And what that concerted activity is any action, I'm summarizing here, but any interaction, any exchange between employees or between employee and employer deemed as a way to improve your work conditions. So, for example, a car salesman, we may have heard this story, car salesman tweets and posts on his Facebook page that my employer, I can't believe they only offered hot dogs and water at this promotional event instead of something more classy. This is going to scare away our customers, something like that. Well, 20 years ago, it would have been a no-brainer to fire someone who is out in a public sphere, in a newspaper ad or a billboard, something that gets read by 1,000 people that says, that disparages their own employer. But nowadays, you can post something on the global internet that can be read by millions of people disparaging the reputation of your employer, and that's protected speech. That was deemed by the board to be something meant to improve his workplace condition, meant to encourage his employer and commiserate with other employees to improve their workplace conditions. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about protected concerted activity. So how does that get to be respectful? Well, the National Labor Relations Board is also taking a look at employer policies. And if the language of your policy, in its view, chills the exercise of protected concerted activity, you can be fined by the board. And a number of companies have. There was a memo issued by the secretary of this organization, the acting counsel of this organization not long ago, that gave an example of 12 different cases. And 11 of those had something wrong with their policy. Language in their policy that, in their view, chilled the exercise of concerted activity. Why is Walmart up there? Because they're the one that has recently been adjudged to have the right kind of language in there. And how did they do it? They gave specific examples. When we say be respectful, this is what we mean. Don't use harassing language. Don't use language that would create an unsafe workplace or an intimidating workplace. Don't defame somebody. Things that are clearly wrong, things that are outside the bounds of lawful activity. But you can come very close to that and still lose. By the opposite token, Costco had their policy struck down because they used broad language that prohibited their employees from injuring somebody else's reputation. Again, a common sense view might tell you that this is something that's a good warning. You don't want your employees going out ruining someone else's reputation or even your employer's reputation. Now, the board says that that's too broad. That could include activity that's meant to improve workplace conditions, so that gets struck down. Those are the types of restrictions we're talking about that we have to be careful to avoid when we're using language like be respectful in communicating to our employees. But honest and accurate, this one is pretty straightforward and pretty uncontroversial by comparison. But it's specifically applied to social media. We want to make sure our people aren't impersonating others, right? Something that happens pretty often, and you wouldn't think that they would, but a lot of people do this. And don't exaggerate, don't stretch the facts, especially when it comes to your workplace or your brand. Don't use what doesn't belong to you, or at least be cautious. And here I have in mind intellectual property rights. And we talked again this morning about copyright, trademark, the right of publicity, a less understood right, which is the right of an individual to control the commercial exploitation of their likeness. So if I'm using pictures of individuals on the company website, I need to be careful how that's done. And first and foremost, I need to make sure I have permission to use images of these people. I want to err on the side of caution in that realm. If I'm using copyrighted information that's posted by someone who's not me or not our company, I want to at least make sure that I either have explicit permission or it's been shared in a context such as a Facebook status or something else that has a share button right there that makes it clear from the context this is something I'm allowed to share.